One thing that is recognized by the younger generation is the Madden Curse. If you play video games out there in listener land, then you've probably at least heard of the Madden series of NFL video games. Series goes back to 89, regular installments began in 92, annual games started in the late 90s. I need to remind everyone that the title of Madden games also runs a year ahead of the actual calendar year. So Madden 24 is being released this year for the 2023 season. Madden 99 was released in 1998 for the 98-99 season, and so on.
Like Cars.
Yeah, basically. It was the cover of Madden 99 that first used NFL players on the cover. Earlier covers had used photos of John Madden himself, who was, at the time, one of the most recognizable and highly acclaimed color commentators of all time. Plus, he was a former Hall of Fame coach for the Raiders. Virtually every athlete chosen for the Madden cover has experienced some sort of serious misfortune that year. Usually it's a major injury, a decline in play, or both.
So are you going to go through the entire list from 99 or just the Midwest ones or just the really notable ones? Because this could take all night in its own, right?
I'm going to name some of the prominent ones.
Okay.
And because the older ones were really brutal.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I remember like it seemed to have softened over time, but the first ones, it was just if you were on Madden, your team wasn't going to make the playoffs and you might be lucky to be alive.
Yeah, you're not kidding. The cover featured Madden himself in the US, but internationally, the cover boy was San Francisco running back Garrison Hurst, and he was the first NFL player on the cover of Madden.
I would not have gotten that trivia question right, by the way.
He had a really good season. He set Niners records for rushing yards and total yards in a season in 98. And then in the playoffs, he suffered one of the most gruesome ankle injuries in the history of football. He missed the next 2 seasons to recover,
Ooh,
and he was never a starting running back again.
that's a brutal way to kick off the curse, missing 2 seasons.
Yeah. So they're like, you know what? In 2000 came along, we're going to put a player on all of our game boxes. We need somebody who's a stud. And they picked Barry Sanders.
Oh, poor Detroit.
A few weeks after this, not even the games hadn't even shipped yet. Barry abruptly and unexpectedly retires.
That's what I was gonna guess just based on the timeline. Just
So the entire league is left reeling as Barry had been expected to break the all-time career rushing mark if he had a typical Barry season. And more on that when we get to the curse of Bobby Lane, so there's overlap.
so before we get too far into this, 99 Hurst was technically the first, but he wasn't on the US covers. He was only internationally. So
Correct.
Barry was the first worldwide player, and he didn't even play a snap that season.
Well, actually, we're not done here
Oh god.
because Madden scrambled, and of later printings, including international, they put Dorsey Levens on the cover of the game, the Green Bay running back. So Dorsey Levens was considered an up and comer at the time. Okay, well, we're not going to get somebody who's going to retire.
I'm gonna say I don't even remember that name.
Dorsey Levens, he was a big deal in 98, but in 99, he
Okay.
had nothing but nagging injuries that
Hmm.
derailed him. The Packers had their worst season since Brett Favre joined at that point. And by the 2001 season, the Packers had quietly cut him.
Okay. So that's why I don't really remember much. I guess he had a good year in 98 before I really started getting into it.
It's amazing how many of these players this was the end of the road for.
Wow.
Madden 2001, so the 2000 game was the Eddie George cover.
Ooh, he got Ray Lewis that year. I remember that.
He had an all-time great year 2000 in terms of the regular season. Then in the playoffs, he bobbled a routine pass that became a Raiders interception. Baltimore scored. Titans season was over. And Eddie George never put up another elite running back season.
I remember that playoff game very well because Eddie George was a Buckeye, so I was really rooting for them. And they were I think 13-3. The Ravens were the second best team in the AFC at 12-4, but they had to play each other earlier because of the way the wild card seedings I think went, right? Eddie George was so brutally stuffed by Ray Lewis that game. He was never the same. Like it's like watching Drexler's stats. If you go back to Pro Basketball Reference and you look at his stats before the Dream Team, before Jordan dressed him down, and after, they took fall off a cliff. And I think Eddie George went from averaging like 5 point something yards per carry to like never breaking four in his career again. Now, he had like 3 or 4 more seasons, but he never was good. He was just there.
For the rest of his career, he averaged less than 3.4 yards per carry.
Oh, that's brutally bad, especially for someone who's that good.
It was the end of the road.
Yep. Madden Curse.
The 2001 season had Dante Culpepper gracing the cover in full Vikings regalia. That was the year that the Madden Curse became a publicly discussed thing because Culpepper injured his knee in the beginning of the season, and then he regressed horribly in 2002, and that was pretty much the end of Dante Culpepper.
He used to be so good. I remember that, and he did not last as long as the other guys of that draft class, like Jonathan McNabb and stuff.
I wonder if this is going to overlap with some of the Viking stuff because this pretty much derailed that build of the Vikings too.
Yeah, I mean they went through a lot of quarterbacks for a while.
Similar to the Eddie George cover was the Marshall Faulk cover in 2002 for Madden 03. Unfortunately for our St. Louis friends, that was the year the decline started for Marshall Faulk. It was his first season under 1,000 yards with the Rams, and he never got to 1,000 yards again. Although he played all the way until he had a knee surgery to repair his knee in the 2006 offseason, and then just that was it. Madden 04, Michael Vick broke his leg in the preseason. The actual 2004 season, the next year, so Madden 05 featured Ray Lewis. And he wasn't exactly awful, but he failed to catch an interception for that year for the first time. And the Ravens also had a rare playoff miss.
I was going to say that's one of the few times they missed the playoffs in that time period.
It was 05 where Lewis tore his hamstring in year 6, so the year after. Madden 06 was the Donovan McNabb cover. He was on fire to start the year and then blew his knee week 11, and he was just never consistently good again.
I didn't look up the timeline, but is that the year that ended their 4 seasons in a row in the NFC Championship game streak, or is that a couple years later? Either way, it's around that time.
A similar story was the 07 cover, Sean Alexander. Broke his foot week 3 of 2006, couldn't stay healthy in 2007, cut in 2008. So here's where we get our next wild story. 2007 game, so I think the 06 year. Madden publisher Electronic Arts wanted LaDainian Tomlinson to be on the cover. And the Chargers fan got wind of this and started just this riotous campaign to keep LT off the cover. Eventually, Tomlinson declined, and they would say, well, there was a breakdown in negotiations for his likeness, and it became maybe the best single season by a running back in history. So instead, the cover in that year went to a quarterback so confident in his own abilities that he openly scoffed at the Madden Curse. It went to Titans quarterback Vince Young.
Well, so long career, Mr. Young. It was short and bright while it lasted.
Young injured his quad in week 6, which was his first game missed for injury ever. Then he came back, re-injured the quad again in week 17. The next year he hurt his knee in week 1, was officially demoted to backup, basically never heard from again. Added bonus, the Spanish language version of Madden released that year was with Chargers defensive end Luis Castillo, who was limited to 10 games with a knee injury. So they're batting 1,000 here.
Oh my God. We're a decade in now, like 10 for 10.
Yeah.
Wow.
The 2008's Madden 09 was a hilarious story. Well, hilarious unless you're a Packer fan. The Green Bay Packers quarterback Brett Favre had just announced his retirement. The curse couldn't affect a retired player, could it? So they put Brett Favre on the cover in his Packers number 4, and about 30 seconds later, Brett Favre decided he didn't really want to retire after all. So he goes to the Jets, where he was okay, but constant off the field issues. And that was also the year he sustained his shoulder injury that he never really got over.
I was going to say off the field issues. I'm not going to say it on the air, but there was a SNL skit about jeans he was promoting, like Wrangler, but different kind of cut. I do remember they actually started off 9-3 and they were looking pretty good. And then he got that shoulder injury you mentioned, and they went 0-4 and missed the playoffs on like a tiebreaker. Like that team was set up perfectly. And then it was just a gut punch for the poor Jets fans who probably are cursed in some way, but they're not in our region. So we're not going to cover them today.
No. Madden 10 was weird because they put two athletes on the cover. Larry Fitzgerald was really the first case of a clean miss by the curse. Not affected. I mean, he did have minor injuries, of course, but he played through everything and his stats didn't take a blip at all. Then the other guy was Pittsburgh safety Troy Polamalu, who ate every last shred of the curse. Sprained his knee week 1, missed 4 games, hobbled through 3 games, injured his knee again, season over.
Was that the year after they played in the Super Bowl or something? Is that why they did both of those teams? Because you remember
I
Pittsburgh
think
beat
so.
them in one of the most exciting Super Bowls I can remember. So I guess the curse. So I guess the curse got revenge.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I could keep going, but you get the point. A Madden cover appearance presaged career low seasons from Drew Brees, 11, Adrian Peterson, 14, career altering injuries to Cleveland running back Peyton Hillis, who was a fan vote in 2012, Richard Sherman, Tommy John in 2015, Rob Gronkowski, 2017. That was his back surgery. Plus, there's the weird case of Antonio Brown, 2018-2019 game. That was his last year with the Steelers. So maybe it was the Madden curse that drove him nuttier than a squirrel's lunch.
Great point, because that was the year where most of it hit the fan, and it went rapidly that last year in Pittsburgh, right through the offseason where he never made the Raiders team and then got cut by the Patriots, etc.
Yeah. For a helmet being that important to him, he was not pictured wearing one. So we don't get it. In later years, there have been quite a few misses. Calvin Johnson got the cover for Madden 13, which sounded like it was going to be a complete disaster in the 2012 season. So it's Curse of Bobby Lane plus Madden Curse plus 13. And he put one of the best wide receiver seasons of all time.
Was that where he like just shy of 2,000 yards?
I think that was, yeah.
Remember Chris Johnson was CJ2K, but Megatron almost made it. But I think he still had this receiving yards record, but I don't think anybody's made 2,000.
Right.
We'll see it in our lifetime now that there's 17 games, but guys like Justin and just more passing. But yeah, that was incredible. So maybe the triple curse whammy worked. They canceled each other out into a positive.
I don't know. Odell Beckham in 2015 had a good year, other than a fight at the end with Carolina cornerback Josh Norman, known agitator. But other than that, and a couple minor things he played through, he did fine. Madden 2018 had Tom Brady. All he did was win an MVP and go all the way to the Super Bowl, though they were upset by the Nick Foles Eagles.
Well, that's the curse, how it affects Tom Brady. You lose by 3 points to Nick Foles because Matt Patricia is your defensive coordinator.
Something like that.
But then that curse got transferred to Detroit because he went there. That Matt Patricia curse, that's its own thing.
Matt Patricia being alive is a curse. Lately, the covers have been entirely established elite level quarterbacks, but it hasn't gone away. There's just been a weird 1 year delay on awful years. Starting with Antonio Brown, who went bananas the year after. That was the year that he didn't make it through Raiders camp. Lamar Jackson, 21, he was fine. He missed 1 game for COVID. Then in actual 21 was when the injuries and decline started. Tom Brady in 22, 21, he was fine. 22, he fell off the cliff.
Hey, they still won the division.
Yeah,
sure. 7-9.
For,
8
yeah. 9. That and $5 will get you a latte at Starbucks. Though Mahomes, who shared the cover with Brady in 2021, and he had his own cover for Madden 2020, seems to have gotten off with a miss. Although that first one, he didn't have his 2019 knee injury, but he missed less than a month.
Was that the year they won their first Super Bowl? Or did they lose to Tom Brady? Because they had a couple painful losses where you could argue if you look back on the Kansas City 6-year run, they might have won 3 or 4. But Maybe that was how the Madden curse affects the elite guys like Mahomes and Brady, where they just lose the Super Bowl instead of winning it. I don't know.
Maybe, but I mean, some people are saying the curse is over now that it hasn't really hit someone year of in a while. And then in 2022, they put John Madden back on the cover as a fitting memorial for his passing.
Oh, I was gonna say, and then he died, but that was, or he had already passed. Okay.
Right. I mean, maybe though it just took a year off and it's ready to strike 2023 cover boy Josh Allen as hard as ever.
On that note, I wonder if someone in my dynasty league wants to trade high for him right now.
uh,
Well, I will say I love Madden. It's an interesting character. If you talk to three different generations, they'll remember him three different ways. You talk to our generation, we'll remember him as the announcer. You talk to younger kids, they'll remember him for the video game. And if you talk to older people, our parents are the boomer types, they'll remember him as a coach, the great coach, and he was great at every right. So
absolutely.
props to him. And thanks for giving us a great curse for us to lead off this episode with.
This is Joe Smith from the Midwest Football Podcast. Please remember to like, subscribe, and leave a comment. It all helps us grow our show. Look for our full show, too, anywhere you find podcasts. Links below.